This is Laura Vanderkam. I'm a mother of 5, an author, journalist, and speaker.
And this is Sarah Hart-Unger. I'm a mother of 3, a practicing physician, and blogger on the side. We are 2 working parents who love our careers and our families.
Welcome to Best of Both Worlds. Here we talk about how real women manage work, family, and time for fun. From figuring out childcare to mapping out long-term career goals, we want you to get the most out of life. Welcome to Best of Both Worlds. This is Laura. This is episode 278, first airing at the end of November 2022. Sarah and I are here in a hotel room in the Florida Keys, enjoying each other's company. Just like last week's episode, we will be doing this one together in person, which is very exciting. This week, we're going to be covering 3 C's to advance your career in 2023. 3 C's standing for 3 things, which we will reveal in the course of this episode. But first, we'll be doing a year in review episode in a few weeks that we'll be talking about how 2022 went. We will also be doing a goals episode talking about what we are aiming for in 2023. But Sarah, I thought we'd start by talking about career goals we have set in the past that we have actually achieved. So what have you done?
Yeah, work is always, as we'll talk about in our goals episodes, it's always one of my categories. And a common theme in my work goal is to do some kind of poster presentation or project to present that at Pediatric Endocrine Society, which is one of our bigger meetings, the one that I like to go to. I don't have a requirement where I work that I have to present. If I want to attend, I'm able to go either way, but it's just a lot more fun when I'm able to showcase some research, usually done together with one of our residents. So the last couple of years, that's been a goal for me. And yeah, I think the last 2 years running, I did have a poster there with a resident, which was really fun.
When you say a poster, can you describe what that is? I mean, I just have this vision in my mind of like 4th grade science fair posters, and I assume it's a little bit more sophisticated than that.
You haven't seen that's so interesting. It's like, okay, so at scientific conferences, there are poster sessions. And it does sort of look like a 4th grade science poster, except they're much larger and people use templates for them. And it's basically like a paper presented in miniature form. So there'll be an abstract, there'll be a section for you to put graphics. If it's a case study, maybe you'll have some relevant photos or things like that. And then some kind of conclusion and references. So it's kind of like a mini paper. It does look like a souped up version of the 6th grade science fair, but you get them printed usually like at a print shop or like there's online venues on these big pieces of paper. So it's a little bit more professional than like gluing things up by yourself. I have been at some international meetings where people will present some very good research from countries that are not as resource rich. And sometimes they are kind of old school in terms of how they put the stuff up. But the quality has nothing to do with how pretty it looks. Although I do like it to look pretty, it has more to do with what's actually on there. So when you have a poster session, you stand next to your poster and people mill around. They look at it. If they think it's interesting, they'll stop and look at it and maybe ask you some questions or ask you to kind of take them through your poster. I, as a faculty member, no longer really have to be in the hot seat. I would have a resident there who can explain what's in there, and then I'm kind of there as backup. The research I do is generally much smaller scale than what I used to do as a fellow, just because I'm not at a big academic institution. But we did actually do like an actual retrospective study where we had data and my resident represented. I didn't even make it to that one. She did it on her own, but it still counts because we did the work together.
That's funny. I've spoken to a lot of groups of medical and scientific professionals, but I guess I've never wandered around looking at posters. So that's kind of fun to think about. Yeah. So I would say a professional goal I had in the past, longtime listeners, readers know that I started tracking my time continuously in the spring of 2015. And my goal had been to go for a year, which I did. I've now continued tracking for 7.5 years. It doesn't take much time or effort, so I just keep going with it. But when I tracked for the first year, my goal had been to write about it somewhere interesting, right? That I undertook this project thinking maybe I could. And a couple of wonderful coincidences happened that I wound up writing about it for the New York Times. The essay ran in their weekend section, and that was really cool because it got some notice by lots of people, among them the organizers of the TED Women Conference in 2016, which is how I wound up giving my TED Talk, which has led to a lot of opportunities as well. So that was a pretty cool, goal coming true kind of moment for me. But we know our listeners are going to have all sorts of incredible goals for 2023. But we want to suggest 3 categories that you might think about using as you look toward your goals for the next year that might inspire you to set some cool ideas. So the first C, the first of the 3 C's, is to collaborate.
Was I supposed to say that at the same time you were? So
no, yes, okay. I mean, if we are in the same place, I guess we could, right?
That would have been cool.
We didn't plan on it. Oh, well. All right. Talk about collaboration.
All right. So, yeah, we came up with these. I think we started with collaborate. I think it's a great one because most of the bigger or more fun work goals are going to be more achievable and more interesting if you are doing them with someone else. And sometimes it's helpful to think about the person you're excited to work with first and then let the project evolve from there. Now, you are listening to a collaboration right now. In 2017, I said I wanted to start a podcast. Laura said she was interested. And I don't think the show would be what it is without either of us. Like, it's the combination that has brought it to what it is. And I think that is so true of so many different types of projects that may relate to your work life as well.
Yeah. So the idea behind collaboration is to choose someone interesting and then do some sort of project with them over the course of the next year. And usually, we are thinking project, like it's a discrete, achievable kind of thing that you will do, whether in our case, it was launching a podcast together, or it could be, doing a poster session together with someone that you will be doing that, or co-authoring an article for something, whether that be an academic journal type article or, in the popular press, or, something for an industry journal or an industry website or what have you. Lots of things you could do. You can, for conferences, right? There's lots of collaborations.
Yes, for conferences and for certainly like for scientific papers, these days, academic projects, not like a small poster, like the one I described above, but big papers can have 20 or 40 or more co-authors. So if you have some kind of idea, don't hesitate to reach out to those in adjacent fields or other fields and see if they might be interested in doing it with you. You'll probably have a lot more success than you would in a vacuum.
Yeah, but it doesn't even have to be specifically related to the substance. I mean, it could be the substance of the work, but I was thinking like you could, if you have a friend at work, you could collaborate on having some sort of brown bag lunch sessions together. Like the 3 friends, you each teach about something. Over the course of 3 weeks on Mondays, people gather to talk to it. And that would be a discrete project that you have done together. If you are in the sort of field where you build up your own audience, so people who are, bloggers or podcasters or, speakers or writers or artists of any sort, anyone who's got their own thing that they're doing and building up an audience, you can often combine with somebody else to market something to both of your audiences. So the 2 of you team up and do, say, a Facebook Live session together, or any of the other social media platforms, Instagram Live, that they have that as well. And just even recording a conversation allows the 2 of you to feed ideas off each other and also reach each other's audiences and likely grow a little bit more with that.
Yeah, you can imagine kind of an analogous thing, except that instead of 2 podcasts, you're bringing together, 2 like divisions in a corporate environment to help each other understand what the other does to maybe mutually benefit both sides.
Yeah. Or it could be something non-workish. I mean, we can collaborate on projects in our personal lives too, that, even if it's not directly work related, can often give us new ideas as well. So, maybe teaming up with someone to go do a career day presentation at, kids' schools, for instance, or a project of bringing a neighborhood group to do something. Lots of different things you could do. So that was the first C. The first C is to collaborate. The second C is to connect. So this is related to collaborating. I think of collaborating as more like choosing a person or 2, but choosing somebody and then doing a discrete project together. I was thinking of connecting more as challenging yourself to stage some sort of gathering, whether it be a one-off one or a continuing one in the course of the next year. So you've done some of this, Sarah.
I love Connect. I mean, it suits my nature. And one of my absolute favorite things oddly, we're talking about going to conferences a lot, which I don't even do that much of. But when I go, connecting is a big priority for me in that I like to meet up with all the people that I trained with, like all of the fellows that I trained with at Duke. Being able to get together on a more casual, like for dinner or something like that, and compare notes about how it's going. I learn so much from those interactions. Plus, they're just so much fun. Like you realize you're not doing this alone, and that like something that felt so hard is something that other people are dealing with as well. And it's just so rewarding on many, many levels. So I love connecting in that way. And I also really enjoy just getting to know my colleagues better, like making sure that we do lunch dates ever so often, making sure that I get to know the members of my staff and like what their families are like and, you know, what they want in life, and just making sure that you are in touch with the human side of people that you work with. They're not just titles with roles. They're people. They can be maybe a different kind of friendship, but it's still a valuable kind of friendship and relationship to me.
Yeah, that definitely makes work a lot more fun. And even if you don't have colleagues per se, I mean, I have many people I work with, but not as part of a big organization. But there are people who do similar things to you or who do related, adjacent things to you who might have helpful ideas. So a couple of years ago, me and a few other people started a writer's strategy group. That there are 5 of us now who we intend at least to gather every month. Some months it hasn't. Over the summer, we tend to take a break, but gather by Zoom once a month to talk through various issues. And the idea is that each of us presents a problem each time. And then for 12 minutes or so, we all talk through it. You know, what are people's ideas? What are their suggestions? What have they seen other people do? And it's all people who are working professionally in the writer space who've published multiple books, but we are fine on the writing part. Like we're not, a lot of like writing groups is sort of like you're critiquing each other's manuscripts. We don't do that. Like we're not, you know, your manuscript's great. It's being commercially published. Like you're good. It's more about how should I market this thing? Or if I've, you know, created these videos, what should I do with them? Or, you know, have this question about, you know, an agent or an editor or how I should deal with these revisions if it's a tricky issue, you know, so it's very helpful to have people who are going through the same thing. Some people form like mastermind groups. Often these are people in maybe even different industries, but you're about the same level and you could gather in person to talk through various problems you might have. But these can just be a great way to have a core group of folks who are kind of in your corner, that you know them really well, you know what they are going through, and together you can achieve great things.
Yeah, sometimes just talking through challenges with someone who does something kind of like what you do, but not exactly, can be incredibly helpful. And some people also really benefit from the accountability aspect. Like if you set a goal together, like I have one friend that I do like monthly phone calls with now, and she's a fellow podcaster and she's awesome. I'll let her be anonymous. It's not Laura though, because I talk to her more often than that. No, anyway, so it's great because we like set goals and then we'll say, okay, by the next time we talk, I hope to have done this, this, and this. And it kind of adds a little bit of fun and a little bit of sometimes needed like lights a fire, I guess I would say.
Lights a fire. We're going to take a quick ad break and then we'll be talking a little bit more about connecting. Well, we are back talking about the 3 C's to advance your career in 2023. The first one was to collaborate. So find somebody cool, do a project with them, just like this podcast being a collaboration between the 2 of us. The second C is to connect. Stage some sort of gathering, whether that be a regular one or one-off or something, with people that you find fascinating, that you can all get to know each other better. I would throw out the idea of, you know, having some sort of party. Parties are great. And even if it's in your personal life, like these things wind up, you know, nobody is just personal or just professional. I mean, if you have any sort of business in your community, like you get to know people like who, you know, if you're a real estate agent, like they're going to be people who need houses. And it's like maybe, you know, people who come to your open house have a friend 2 years later who need their house sold, or, you know, it's just, the more people you know, the better off you are. And a party is a great way to not only bring people to you, and they enjoy the time that they're spending together. But you can reach out to a ton of other people, even if they aren't going to attend or they can't or whatever. They have this sense that they're connected to you now, and that tends to want to be reciprocated. I'm sure you've experienced this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And no spoilers or anything, but I definitely have throwing a party in our house that we now own as a goal for a future list. I think it's just, it's such a great opportunity. And you can do work-related parties, you can do neighborhood parties, you could do, other parents at school. And it's, it's really fun, and it's also networking. So you just win all around.
Win all around, yeah. And just thinking through who you would invite forces you to think through sort of local acquaintances, right? And that is a good experience because I don't know. I mean, some people's brains are definitely better organized that way, but many of us don't have a perfect sort of Rolodex system in our brains. That it's good to be reminded of all the people who might be interested in X, Y, or Z.
We just lost every listener under the age of 35.
They're like, what is this Rolodex thing of which you speak? I don't know anything other than phones in my contacts in my phone list. So whatever. Okay, fine.
Do you have a Rolodex?
I do not have a Rolodex, and I never did. But
I've seen them.
I've seen them. I'm aware that they
on other people's desks. Usually, they have gray hair.
Yeah,
if they're still on someone's desk, it's like someone over.
But 60. I'm always finding how many people don't know what CC actually means.
Is it not carbon copy?
It's carbon copy.
Okay,
you knew that. You knew that.
I got nervous.
Well, but you and I are the age where we had typewriters back in the day, even if they were transitioning out of them. But people had to create a carbon copy of something, which curiously enough, the 1099s had anyway.
Oh, well, yeah. They're still like that. You have to press your pen down really hard. Okay.
Moving on.
Number 3.
Number 3. Collect. Oh, this is the year that you are going to make more money. Right?
In part out of necessity because, maybe we have some overseas listeners who are not experiencing inflation, and awesome. But in this country, we have had major inflation, and who knows where that's going. I don't think we would deign to make any predictions on this particular podcast. I definitely don't have that expertise to do so. But I will tell you that our money right now is certainly worth less in US dollars than the same amount was worth in 2020 or 2019, let's say. So keeping that in mind, it's a really good time and an important time to look and make sure that your compensation is keeping up with that. Also, kind of the job marketplace being the way it is right now. Again, this could change by the time this airs. I don't even know. But in certain career paths, it's also a nice time to ask for a raise because they may be offering higher amounts to people that they're looking to hire right now, for example, just to make sure that they are getting appropriate people on staff. So just make sure you look at that and think about it, and potentially, have a key meeting at your evaluation to discuss how well your compensation has kept up with that. And if not, asking pivotal questions like, what could I do? What could I accomplish for this organization that in 6 months or whatever time frame you choose would warrant that 10% raise or 15% raise that would help your compensation keep up with costs?
Yeah. I mean, you should feel free to go ahead and ask, right? Like there's nothing wrong with asking for a raise. And particularly in this environment, you will not be the first person to have brought this up. But if your organization is in a position where they aren't necessarily handing out raises at the moment, that's when you can pivot to that conversation of, I would like to revisit this in 6 months. And what would you like to have seen me do in the next 6 months that we could, have me then earning X, whatever X is that you have determined is sort of the fair market value if you were to go out and find a different job, which is also something you could consider. I know there's a lot of turmoil involved in changing jobs, and particularly if you've been somewhere for a while and are very comfortable with it. But there's some pretty good evidence that people who do change jobs wind up earning more, that is actually one of the ways that people do boost their salary over time. And that's too bad that is what happens. But I mean, we're all human. We tend not to necessarily be like, oh, yes, I should make sure that all my employees are currently compensated at exactly what I would hire people to replace them at. It's just not the sort of thing that people do. Wages tend to be stickier than that.
And on the employee angle, when you develop connections, you're not necessarily like, I will change jobs exactly every 5 years to maximize my return, because you may like working at a certain company with the people you're working for and with. But, we have to also remind you that if you're not getting paid fairly, it is a job, and you probably need to make sure that you're at least within the range of acceptable compensation. No relationship can fully make up for really bad underpayment.
Yeah. Now, of course, compensation isn't only the amount of money you are getting paid, as in like the actual currency that is in your take-home paycheck. There are other things that are usually part of the compensation. This would be a good time to visit some of that, right?
Yes. Make sure you are collecting your benefits. And, I've worked for mostly one organization, and there are a ton of benefits offered where I work, and I'm sure at many similar places, and probably certain types of companies offer even more amazing benefits. So paid leave is a benefit that some places offer, and you want to make sure that if that's something you want to do, that you are taking advantage of that. Make sure you also look at whether there is a use it or lose it situation, because sometimes you got to use up those days in order to not leave them by the wayside. Professional development, so in the medical realm, that might be CME money. You also might want to make sure it may be over a certain amount of time per the year. And depending on, whether your travels were limited during COVID, your year may be coming to a close and maybe you didn't go anywhere. So maybe there's some kind of online learning that you could pay for now using last year's money if it's too late to travel. Mental health care, backup childcare, all that stuff. Sometimes benefits may be available, but not obvious. Like, they're not going to email you every week and say, remember, you put aside money in your FSA, or you have X number of backup childcare days. You have to keep track of them as someone who might utilize them. But if you need that stuff and it's part of your benefits, just make sure you are collecting on that, because it is kind of part of your overall compensation package.
Yeah, definitely want to make sure you use that. We actually used a couple backup childcare days this summer that it turned out my husband has a fairly significant number of backup childcare days available to him. And so when we needed that this summer for a while, we were able to use a couple days at Bright Horizons. That's a pretty common one that a lot of major companies pay for a certain number of backup days there. But in addition to that, like Bright Horizons doesn't have infinite number of spaces in, say, their toddler class. So some days we got it and some days we didn't. But they actually paid to have a nanny come to us, like through an agency. They had somebody come. And again, I wasn't really going to be comfortable with, leaving my kid with somebody I didn't know very well if I was like then going to go to New York for the day. But since I was working from home, I had like a ton of recordings that day. I was like, I need to do these. And he wanted to work as well. And so we were able to have that. And, it was a very wonderful caregiver that they sent us for that. So, really, really look into those options as well. There may be things you need to do to use them, but this can be your public service announcement to go look into your company's benefits, whatever those happen to be, because sometimes there are entirely random ones. And I'm not saying that you're going to use all of them, but maybe you have a corporate membership to a local art museum and you haven't even thought, like nobody put this, like as you're saying, they don't email you every week about this. So, but why not take your family for free as like an afternoon activity someday?
And don't forget about matches. So obviously this isn't every company that offers this, but many, if you are putting aside money in your 401k or 403b, they'll match up to a certain amount. And that is literally free money that you are collecting. So just make sure you are taking full advantage of any match programs that are offered at your institution.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and do a little shout out for folks who are not at companies. I'm like, wow, the idea of a retirement match sounds kind of exciting. I have never had a job where that would be remotely, but it's fine because it turns out the limits for self-employed 401ks are far higher. So it's, kind of exciting to have that available to you as well. But if you are working for yourself, how do you earn more over the next year? Well, a couple things you can do. I mean, some of this is about the time you put in. That marketing is an investment and you can carve out time to do it. Marketing is always one of those things that people who run their own businesses, work for themselves, know we should be doing and do not do nearly enough of. I'm well aware of that in my world, that I sort of have chronically underinvested in that. But just saying, okay, I'm going to do, let's say, 2 hours every Thursday afternoon on marketing. I am going to think about what things I could offer the world, think about who I could offer them to, think about what they would pay. Sometimes it's very easy to scale something up. Maybe it's just that you offer a course and maybe you just need to raise the rates a tiny little bit and it's not enough that people are going to turn it away, or maybe you have, an oversubscribed situation for it anyway, but then that's just money straight to the bottom line that you then got. It might be that you just make a habit of reaching out to people, particularly to old clients. I mean, it's a great idea just to remind those people that you exist. Because again, most of our brains, not the Rolodexes. So they loved you, but they haven't seen you in 2 years. They don't remember that you are on this planet until you remind them. But I know I have reached out to people when I've seen that they've gotten a new job somewhere, that like editors I've worked with in the past. And I would say the odds that the person then writes me back and is often like, would you be interested in writing for this place, has been fairly high. So whatever that looks like in your particular industry, yes, you just want to be a force for good in the world, that you congratulate people on anything that goes right. But it often winds up being, something that helps you bring in more business in the future as well.
Makes total sense.
So for our should we do love of the week or question? Which one are we doing first?
I'm going to have to come up with a love of the week on the fly. You're first.
Right, why don't we do our question then? Because this was one that we got, which a listener who lives in an apartment and has many children asked us about having people over. So she is, living her best life, lots of great things going on with her career and her family. She would like to expand her social circle, have those parties we were talking about, have friends over for dinner, whatever it is. She is concerned that her apartment is always a mess because there are many children in this apartment, not a whole lot of space. So she feels bad about inviting people over. So do we have any suggestions for her?
So before I knew this was an apartment, I was like, duh, just clean one room. I mean, I feel like that
clean
is
one room sitting there. They'll never know the difference.
That is the tried and true. I mean, your house can be like a whirlwind, but if you have people over and generally say, we're just going to like stay over here and the kids can go play in the messy rooms, but like, we're just going to hang out here and that room looks nice. That's like really all you need is one calm space. So I guess my question, I don't know, I haven't seen this person's apartment, is could you kind of extrapolate that to one corner, one area of your apartment? Maybe it's like the table and like one clear surface. And, just tell your guests not to worry about the rest. I mean, my gut instinct is like, if it's somebody this depends on like who the audience is, right? So if it's like your boss, I could see wanting to get things a little bit more on the perfection, like the, clean, clear side. But if it's someone that's your true friend and you want to hang out with, then, I mean, probably they have messes in their house too. And I definitely have I feel like the closer I am to someone, the more I'm like, yes, come over, our house is a disaster. And I've never felt like, even after welcoming someone into our house the first time and our house not being perfectly clean, I've never felt like that, ruined the relationship. And honestly, if it does, that probably wasn't a worthwhile relationship anyway.
I would say you need to think about this from the other perspective. I mean, you may feel embarrassed for whatever reason about, the fact that you have lots of kids and toys and kid messes in your house or whatever. But have you ever been to someone's house that is, not straight out of Pinterest and judged them as a result? Like if you've been invited to a friend's house for dinner and they had kid toys on the floor, were you like, wow, this person, she clearly doesn't have her stuff together. Whoa, I think less of her now. I really don't think many of our listeners have that mindset. And so most likely the people that you are inviting over don't think that way either, right? That's just not how people are. We're grateful that somebody had us. We're excited about spending a night together, talking about fun stuff. If we were able to have our kids play together in another part of the house, even better. I didn't even have to hire a babysitter and got to do an evening, with adult company. That sounds pretty awesome. The one thing I will say, you probably want to clean the bathroom.
Yes, agreed. But it doesn't have to be like an elaborate clean. Like go in there with some spray, like wipe everything down, make sure it's okay, and move on.
Move on with your life. But yeah, I think that would be the one thing that some people might have a more visceral kind of unhappiness about with an unclean bathroom, which they have less control over versus like just, seeing kid toys on the floor or something like that. So, don't make it be an issue. Clean whatever bathroom you're going to have your guests use. Maybe even light a nice little candle, put in the clean towels, put your focus on that. And if that room is clean, just don't let your kids use it for, whatever that day that you've been. Hopefully there's more than one bathroom in this apartment if they have multiple kids. As long as it's a 2-bathroom apartment, then they can all use the other bathroom for the day when you are having people over. But yeah, I would say our advice is have people over. Don't worry so much about the mess.
Yes. All right. I came up with a love of the week.
All right. You go first then.
Interval workouts.
Which, by the way, I got to witness this morning on our hotel treadmills.
It is, pretty crazy. Especially on the treadmill. It is so much more fun to do intervals than it is to do in general. But I got to say, just like as I'm in sort of a running obsession phase, like the best workouts are the ones where you have to do some specific set of intervals because they go by so fast and they're challenging, and running fast is pretty exhilarating, makes you feel younger than you actually are, perhaps for brief moments in time. So just really enjoy those types of workouts.
Yeah, whatever Sarah was doing was pretty intense this morning. It went on for quite a while. I was like...
It was complicated, but it was good.
I lifted some weights and then left, and I was like, I was showered, I had my coffee.
And then you get a text, I'm done.
I'm done, finally. Yeah, no. So my love of the week, sadly, all I did was run like a, plodding little 5K and did a few weights somewhat half-heartedly and then was out of there. But I had a lovely little bit of espresso on my porch here in this particular hotel that they have these espresso machines in the room, which are great. I know often hotels have like those K-cup type coffee. This is similar, only it's with espresso pods. And
it's better.
It's better. But I'm kind of liking the espresso concept in general. I mean, I love coffee, but you drink a lot of coffee, you're running to the bathroom all morning. Whereas espresso, there's just less liquid involved, less volume, which, you get the caffeine, but without the same need.
And I like the foam.
The foam.
A little bit of foam.
Well, there you go. All right. Well, this has been Best of Both Worlds. We've been talking about the 3 C's for advancing your career in 2023. We hope everyone will give these a try. If you're thinking about goals you might set in the upcoming year, first, to collaborate. So choose someone cool, start a project together, like, hey, launching a podcast. Connect. So stage some sort of gathering or get together with people that you find interesting, colleagues or people in an adjacent field, whether that's starting like a strategy group or a mastermind group, or, just having people get together for a party, or having a recurring sort of, lunch group at your office. All of those are great ideas, but be the person to start it. Lots of people want to have these things. They don't necessarily want to be the person to start them, but, our listeners are ambitious and productive people. So if anyone's going to start it, it's going to be you. And finally, collect. So think about how you can make more money in 2023. Money, of course, is not everything in this world, but it does enable a lot more choices and can make life a lot more easier. And you should be fairly compensated for all the wonderful things you are doing. So yeah, this has been Best of Both Worlds. We will be back next week with more on making work and life fit together.
Thanks for listening. You can find me, Sarah, at theshoebox.com. or at @the_shoebox on Instagram.
And you can find me, Laura, at lauravanderkam.com. This has been the Best of Both Worlds podcast. Please join us next time for more on making work and life work together.